Could you tell us a little about your history and background?
I spend most of my life now writing prose, but I really think of myself as a poet anyway. The source of my creativity is in poetry. And my first few books were books of poetry. I was writing them when I was a graduate student at Cornell. And even then, I couldn't quite decide if I wanted to be in the arts or I wanted to be in the sciences. So I was getting a degree in English and comparative literature, but I was always poaching in the sciences. I was taking courses in physics for poets, or anthropology, or chemistry, or astronomy. And ultimately, I did write an interdisciplinary PhD about the metaphysical mind in science and art.
Wow. Is your life as exciting as it reads in your book, The Rarest of the Rare?
You know, sometimes people ask me where to go for adventure because they assume that I live at Red Alert most of my life with wall-to-wall adventures, and I go to far-flung places before breakfast. But the truth is that I think that adventure is something that you take with you. And if you go in search of adventure, you're never going to find it. You're going to be frustrated in one of 100 ways. You have to take adventure to find adventure. So since I believe that, I can find fabulous adventures in my backyard. For the last couple of years, for instance, I've been studying the squirrels in my backyard. I gathered up all of my gray squirrels, anesthetized them with the help of a vet, put jewelry on them, earrings in the left ear on the females, right ear on the males, and gave them color-coded necklaces so I could tell who was who, and then I studied them. For some reason, nobody had sat down and really studied the relationships of gray squirrels in any kind of detail. National Geographic paid for all of their nuts and the terrain, but I'm going out there to see what the sunlight is like at that moment, and if there are red-tailed hawks around. One day I was out biking, looked up and found that I was biking at exactly the same speed as a flock of goldfinches. It was amazing. I loved it. I loved the sound. I loved realizing that I must be passing through a thistle area since that's what they like to feed on. And I liked that I just was like any other goldfinch, traveling with them. So I have adventures in my backyard, and people can. You don't have to go out looking for nature in far-flung places. But having said that, I have been very privileged that a few times a year I get to go out on extraordinary expeditions. The Rarest of the Rare is a collection of some of those travels. They're travels to see some of the rarest animals in the world. And I went for a few reasons, some of them quite selfish. For example, it bothers me that we don't know anything about what dinosaurs were like. We don't know if they were warm-blooded, if they were cold-blooded. How did they cosset their young? What sounds did they make? And yet, we have the equivalent of dinosaurs right now walking around among us. They're going extinct, and we haven't chronicled their ways. That hurts me so much that I've been setting out to celebrate some of them, witness them, and just learn about them. It's my privilege to do that as an Earth ecstatic, but I think it's also my duty as part of the species responsible for their downfall. But I should also add on top of that, that even though these are serious reasons for going out and getting involved in nature, the best reason is that nature is so much fun. There are a lot of gloom and doom naturalists who seem to know too much what nature is for to be able to enjoy it very much. And I just think that's a shame. Above all, nature is great fun. It's very nourishing. It's a spiritual experience, and it fills us with a sense of belonging that is critically important to us right now when we become increasingly more and more hollow inside, more isolated as a whole society and as individuals. Now is the time more than ever when we need to get out and reacquaint ourselves with our relationship in nature.
Wow. How are you able to write in such a magical way? What's your writing process?
Well, bless you for saying that. When I'm out in the field, what I do is take with me 2 small spiral-bound notebooks. They're yellow, which I don't know why they're always yellow. Maybe that's the color of hope. But I fill them only with sensory notes. I figure that I can remember later what the action was, and I don't really have to jot down what people have to say. I could always call up somebody and interview them. But what I'm not going to be able to remember are the sensations. I won't be able to remember what the quality of light on the ocean was like, or the heat burning off of the coral sand, or the sound that a monk seal makes, or the way that albatrosses engage in a kind of erotic minuet during courtship, or maybe the way that a person is walking. I'm not going to remember those things, so I jot them down. They're poetic sensory notes. I fill these little notebooks with them, and then when I go back home, I can recreate everything in my mind theater on my senses, immediately on my senses, and just resubmerge myself in the experience. Sometimes I can replay it more slowly than it actually happened, which is fun, but most of all, I can be back into the drama and feel it, smell it, hear it, and that's what I really love.
What's your next project?
Well, I did just finish a book this past weekend, or I should say I completed it. It's not finished yet. I wrote the last pages, but I'm going to polish it and fuss with it a little bit. Half of my books tend to be about nature and animals, and half of them tend to be about human nature, about love or the senses, some aspect of psychology or poetry. Pretty straight up and down poetry about love and despair and nature and parents and growing up and all the normal things that poets become bothered by. But I thought it would be nice to fuse those things more tightly. And so the book that I have been working on over the last couple of years is about human psychology, but it's set in the bevel of nature, in the context of nature. So the squirrels appear and all of their tribulations in the book, and the human beings who live in the town that I live in and what's going on in their lives appear there too. So that's just finished. My next job is to finish a new book of poems that I've been working on over the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to that more than anything. I love writing poetry. I love that better than any other thing that I do creatively. And sometimes when I'm working on a book of prose, unbeknownst to the reader perhaps, I will pull out some of what I consider unrequited poems that I haven't been able to make work for one reason or another, and I'll just insinuate them into the text if they happen to be relevant. Maybe the reader can tell, I don't know. But part of the time when I'm working on prose books, I lose perspective about whether I'm actually writing poetry or prose myself, because my instincts are a poet's instincts. I want to somehow be able to select from existence those images, those profound moments that are meaningful to us and that teach us about being human. And that happens whether I'm writing poetry or whether I'm writing prose.
What's the name of one of your books on poetry?
The best place to find my poetry is in a book called Jaguar of Sweet Laughter, New and Selected Poems. The wonderful thing about being able to do a selected poems is that a poet can bring back into print her favorite poems from books of hers that have already gone out of print. So it includes a new book of poetry and also my favorites from 5 other books of poems. So it's quite a large collection. And I think probably my readers will be surprised to discover that there are Antarctic poems, Amazon poems, that when I went to these various places to write about them in essays, there would always be some kind of emotional overspill that would result in poetry too. And also, I would learn about sensory things that fell into a natural history of the senses. And also, I would learn about courtship behavior among animals, and that would fall into the book on love. So all of my books really communicate with one another in different ways. They were all being written simultaneously.
Lastly, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience?
Boy, that's hard. I've got to think about this for a second. There are so many possibilities. What would I say to your audience? Well, the first thing is carpe diem. It's grace to be born and just be alive, surrounded by golden-shouldered parakeets and marine iguanas and jealousy and prom dresses and all the marvelous aspects of being human and all of our animal neighbors. So I would encourage them to live in the moment. So many religions teach us. And also, I would just be grateful to them, because I know that your readers are people who adore books, like me, who love finding the friendly minds in books. Very often I travel with books that I may not actually read on that trip. Books by people like Colette, or Rilke's prose, or sometimes Dylan Thomas or Wallace Stevens, just because I like the comfort of having them around me. They're people whose sensibilities I understand. Authors live for me in books, and I bet that's true of your viewers too.
Thank you. It's a wrap.